The blue holographic display cast eerie shadows across Ambassador Tay's face as she watched another colony world vanish from the grid. The small light representing Nexus 7 flickered 3 times before disappearing completely. Silence filled the command center of the Azurian flagship Eternal Dawn *. No one dared speak as the death toll numbers scrolled across secondary screens. 8 billion lives extinguished in less than 6 hours. That makes 3 systems in 26 days, said Chief Strategist Day, his voice barely above a whisper. His silver skin had paled to a sickly white, a physical manifestation of the horror gripping all Azurians. Ambassador Ta nodded, her 4 eyes blinking in their distinctive diagonal pattern that signaled deep distress. The voidborn armada had appeared at the edge of Azurian space without warning 3 months ago. At first, the Confederacy had dismissed them as another nomadic species seeking trade or perhaps territory negotiations. That illusion shattered when the voidborn consumed their first border world. Consumed was the only appropriate term. They stripped planets of all resources, including organic matter. Nothing remained of thriving colonies except barren rock. The Galactic Council has rejected our petition for emergency aid, reported Minister Yo, joining them at the command table. The Myth-Ari Dominion claims we exaggerate the threat. The Solarian Compact voted to observe further developments before committing resources. They fear involvement, Ta said. I cannot blame them. The projections, Ambassador, said Da, sliding a data crystal across the table. Based on current voidborn advancement patterns, we have 43 days until they reach our homeworld. Tai inserted the crystal into her personal console. The display shifted to show a simulation of the coming weeks, a tide of darkness sweeping across Azurian territory, system by system, unstoppable and absolute. The military options, General Min, Tai asked, turning to the weathered military commander who had remained silent throughout the briefing. General Min stepped forward. Unlike the diplomats and strategists with their ornate robes and jeweled status indicators, Min wore the simple gray uniform of the Azurian Defense Force. We have lost 60% of our fleet already. The voidborn vessels absorb our energy weapons and are heavily shielded against our kinetic options. We cannot stop them. The truth hung heavy in the air. The Azurian Confederacy, a peaceful alliance of 14 star systems that had known prosperity for 6,000 years, faced extinction within 2 months. Ta closed her eyes, considering options that had previously been unthinkable. When she opened them, her decision was made. There is one possibility we haven't discussed, she said. The Deathworlders. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Even General Min looked shocked. Earth? He asked. Ambassador, with respect, their civilization is barely 1,000 years into space exploration. They're technologically primitive in some ways, yes, Tai interrupted. Advanced in others, particularly warfare. Communications Officer Jin, who had been monitoring transmissions at her station, turned in her seat. The humans have a reputation for violence, Ambassador. Their history is filled with conflicts we would find incomprehensible. They fought wars over resources that they could have shared. They also fought wars to protect others, Tai countered. Their historical records show numerous instances where they intervened in conflicts not their own, at great cost. And their planet. Minister Yo shuddered visibly. Earth is classified as a death world for good reason. Higher gravity, extreme temperature variations, deadly radiation levels, aggressive microorganisms, and predatory fauna. The humans themselves are apex predators. Ta nodded. Exactly. They evolved in conditions that would kill any of us within minutes. Their bodies can withstand physical trauma that would be fatal to an Azurian. They breathe oxygen concentrations that would be toxic to most spacefaring species. And you want to invite these creatures into our territory? Chief Strategist Day asked, his voice rising with alarm. I want to invite them to save us from extinction, Tay replied firmly. The voidborn consume everything in their path. Earth lies beyond our space, but they will reach it eventually. The humans have a saying, The enemy of my enemy is my friend. General Min frowned. That philosophy has limitations, Ambassador. So does extinction, Ta said. Officer Jin, prepare a distress signal on all frequencies. Include all data we have on the voidborn, their attack patterns, and their technological capabilities. Direct it toward Earth. Jin hesitated, her fingers hovering over her console. Ambassador, are we truly that desperate? Ta looked once more at the simulation still playing on her display, the unstoppable darkness consuming world after world. We are beyond desperate, Jin. We are already ghosts unless something changes. Jin nodded and began composing the transmission. The command center fell silent except for the soft peeps of her console as she worked. It will take approximately 6 hours for the signal to reach Earth, even using our fastest quantum relays, Jin finally announced. The message is ready for your review. Ta read the desperate plea that might determine the fate of her species. After making a few minor adjustments to the translation algorithms, she authorized transmission. Message away, Jin confirmed as the distress call began its journey across the vast emptiness of space toward a small blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Admiral Huan stood at the viewport of Earth Defense Command Headquarters, gazing at the gleaming ships of the home fleet in orbit above. The massive battleships, sleek destroyers, and nimble frigates represented humanity's commitment to never again being vulnerable to threats from beyond their world. Admiral, called his aide. The council is assembled. Huan nodded and made his way to the circular chamber where 12 representatives from Earth's unified governments waited. The room fell silent as he entered. 3 hours ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected an unusual transmission directed specifically at Earth. Huan began without preamble. It's a distress call from a civilization calling themselves the Azurian Confederacy. He activated the central holographic projector, displaying the translated message along with images of the slender, four-eyed Azurians and the ominous shadow vessels of the Voidborn. These Azurians have never even taken a spacewalk without environmental suits, he noted, displaying comparative biological data. Their homeworld has 1/3 our gravity and negligible radiation. They evolved in what we would consider paradise conditions. And now they face extinction, observed Counselor Park, reviewing the data on her personal display. Correct, said Huan. The Voidborn, whoever they are, have destroyed 3 Azurian systems in less than a month. Their projections indicate total collapse of their civilization within 2 months. Commander Suk, head of strategic operations, leaned forward. The Azurians' weapons are ineffective against these Voidborn. However, our analysis suggests our kinetic mass drivers and fusion torpedoes might penetrate their defenses where Azurian energy weapons failed. This isn't our war, Counselor Lee objected. We have no treaties with these aliens, no obligations. If we don't stand now, Commander Suk countered, we'll face these Voidborn alone later. Their pattern is clear. They consume everything and move to the next target. Earth is merely further down their list. Murmurs filled the chamber as the council members considered the implications. The full fleet? Asked Counselor June. That would leave Earth with minimal defenses. Admiral Huan nodded gravely. The threat assessment justifies no less. If these Voidborn can destroy 14 star systems with their current forces, we need overwhelming firepower to make an impact. After hours of debate, the final vote was unanimous. Earth would go to war. Prepare all ships, Admiral Huan ordered as he left the council chamber. We depart in 24 hours. As klaxons sounded throughout Earth's orbital installations and planetary bases, Huan returned to the viewport. For the first time in 50 years, humanity would commit its full military might to a single cause. For the first time ever, they would fight alongside aliens to defend worlds not their own. Yet Huan felt certainty rather than doubt. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting, against nature, against disease, against itself. Perhaps this was why they had survived their harsh world. to stand against threats that more peaceful species could not face alone. Send acknowledgement to the Azurian Confederacy, he instructed the communications officer. Tell them help is coming. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm breaking upon a calm sea. 47 battleships, their hulls dark and scarred from previous conflicts, formed the vanguard. Behind them came over 200 destroyers, arranged in perfect defensive formations. At the center floated the flagship Dauntless, a vessel so massive it dwarfed the largest Azurian cruiser. Silence fell across the Azurian welcoming station as the defense screens displayed the human armada. No one had expected such numbers. No one had imagined such firepower. By the 4 moons, whispered Science Director Hyun, his silver skin reflecting the red alert lights that had automatically activated. Their vessels are covered in armor plating. They build ships expecting to be hit. Ambassador Ta nodded slowly. The Azurian philosophy of shipbuilding emphasized shields and evasion systems, elegant vessels that avoided damage. These human ships were different. Their hulls bore scars and patches, evidence of battles survived rather than avoided. "How many weapons do you count?" asked General Min, who stood rigid beside the ambassador. "Too many," replied Tactical Officer Sung, his eyes wide as the computer struggled to catalog the various weapon systems. "The leading battleship alone has more firepower than our entire home defense fleet. And they brought 47 of them," said Min, his voice hollow. A communications officer raised her hand. "Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Their admiral requests permission to dock and meet in person." Ta hesitated only briefly. "Grant permission and prepare the diplomatic reception chamber." As the human shuttle approached the docking bay, medical staff rushed to distribute emergency breathing masks to all Azurian personnel. The station's environmental systems had been adjusted to create a habitable zone for humans, but many officials feared it might not be sufficient. "Remember," Tai instructed her staff, "no sudden movements. Their homeworld is populated by predators, and they retain instinctive responses to perceived threats." The shuttle docked with a heavy thunk that vibrated through the station's deck. The airlock cycled, and then, to the horror of the assembled Azurian officials, the inner door opened without any of the expected decontamination procedures. Admiral Huan stepped onto the Azurian station without an environmental suit. Behind him followed 6 human officers, similarly unprotected. Several Azurian officials backed away instinctively, their breathing masks clutched tightly to their faces. One stood a full head shorter than the Azurians, but his stance suggested a density and strength that made him seem larger. His dark uniform bore minimal decorations, just a rank insignia and a single row of service ribbons. In contrast, the Azurian officials wore elaborate ceremonial garments indicating their various statuses and achievements. "Ambassador Te," Huan said, his universal translator converting his words to the melodic Azurian language. "The United Earth Defense Force answers your call." Ta stepped forward, consciously controlling her instinct to retreat from this creature that could survive conditions that would kill her in minutes. "Admiral Huan, your prompt response is unexpected. We are grateful." She noticed with discomfort how the Admiral's eyes scanned the room, pausing briefly on each armed guard, each exit, each potential threat. It was the automatic assessment of a predator species. "You breathe toxins," she observed, watching Huan casually inhale oxygen levels that would be poisonous to her kind. Huan smiled, displaying too many teeth in what humans considered a friendly gesture, but which registered as deeply alarming to the herbivorous Azurians. "One species' toxin is another's heir, Ambassador." Science Director Hyun approached cautiously, his scientific curiosity temporarily overriding his fear. "Your biology must be remarkably robust, Admiral. Our analysis suggests Earth's gravity is nearly triple our homeworld's. Which explains why you all look like you could blow away in a strong breeze," commented one of the human officers before catching a sharp look from Huan. "Commander Kim," Huan said quietly, "remember your diplomatic briefing." "My apologies," "Ambassador," said the officer named Kim, looking genuinely contrite. "No offense intended." "None taken," replied Ta, though she noted how casually the humans discussed physical characteristics that would be considered impolite in Azurian culture. "Perhaps we should move to the conference room to discuss strategy." As they walked through the station's corridors, Tay observed how the humans moved, with a contained energy that suggested they were holding themselves back. Their steps were too deliberate, their movements too controlled for beings accustomed to higher gravity. In the conference room, holographic displays showed the latest intelligence on voidborn movements. General Min took the lead in briefing the humans. "The voidborn fleet has already consumed these systems," he said, indicating several points on the star map. "Their current trajectory suggests they will reach the Luris system within 6 days. Luris has a population of 12 billion, added Ta. Admiral Huan studied the displays with intense focus. "These void-born ships, they don't appear to have conventional engines or weapon systems." "They don't," confirmed Hyun. "They operate on principles we cannot fully comprehend. Our weapons seem to be absorbed rather than deflected." "Show me the footage of your last engagement," Huan requested. The hologram shifted to display an Azurian defense fleet firing brilliant blue energy beams at the dark, asymmetrical voidborn vessels. The beams seemed to disappear into the shadowy hulls without effect. "Energy weapons," muttered Commander Kim. "No wonder you couldn't hurt them." "We noticed your ships are equipped with what appear to be kinetic weapons," said General Min. "Our civilization abandoned such technology centuries ago as inefficient." Juan nodded. "Sometimes the old ways work best. If something can absorb energy, let's see how it handles a tungsten rod traveling at a significant fraction of light speed." The casual way he described such destructive capability sent a ripple of unease through the Azurian officials. "How quickly can your fleet reach Luris?" asked Ta. "We can depart immediately," Juan replied. "Our ships were built for extended deployments." As the meeting continued, an Azurian aide entered and whispered urgently to Ta. Her 4 eyes widened in alarm. "Admiral," she said, interrupting a technical discussion between Min and Kim, "we've just received word that a voidborn scout group has been detected on the edge of this system." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The Azurians had expected at least 2 more weeks before the voidborn reached this far into their territory. Juan's posture changed instantly. The polite diplomat vanished, replaced by a warrior. "How many ships?" "3 vessels," replied Ta. "Small by their standards, but—" "Perfect," said Juan, and the word contained a hunger that made Ta step back involuntarily. "Commander Kim, signal Battle Group 5 to intercept. Let's see how these voidborn handle humans." As Juan issued crisp orders to his staff, Tay exchanged glances with General Min. The Azurians had sought help from the humans out of desperation, but now, seeing these predators in action, a new worry formed. If the humans defeated the voidborn, what would stop them from claiming Azurian space for themselves? As if reading her thoughts, Juan turned to Tai after finishing his instructions. "Ambassador, I understand your concern. You've invited a dangerous species into your home. But Earth remembers its own history too well to become conquerors. We fight to protect, not to dominate." "How did you know what I was thinking?" asked Ta, startled. Juan's smile was smaller this time, less alarming. "Because it's what I would think in your position. Now, shall we go watch humanity's first contact with these voidborn? I believe it will be educational for both our species." Fleet Commander Jum stood on the bridge of the Azurian cruiser Eternal Dawn *, his hands trembling slightly as he watched the battle unfold on the main view screen. 3 days had passed since the humans arrived in Azurian space, and now they faced their first major confrontation with the voidborn. "Impossible," he muttered, watching the human pilots execute maneuvers that would rupture Azurian organs. A small fighter craft pulled a turn so tight that the Azurian monitoring systems warned of structural failure. Yet the craft held together, and its pilot remained conscious despite forces that would have killed any Azurian instantly. Their neural systems should be shutting down under those pressures, remarked Medical Officer Ree, who stood beside him. Even with their denser bone structure and stronger cardiovascular systems, they shouldn't be able to remain functional. Ambassador Todd joined them on the bridge, her silver skin reflecting the flashing lights of the tactical displays. The human Admiral Juan informed me their pilots use stimulants and specialized breathing techniques to remain conscious during extreme maneuvers. Drugs? Asked Rai, shocked. They deliberately poison themselves to fight better. Their biochemistry is remarkably adaptable, said Ta. What would kill us merely enhances them, temporarily. On the screen, the battle spread across the Luris system's outer asteroid belt. The voidborn had arrived with 30 of their shadow vessels, more than enough to overwhelm the Azurian defenders in previous encounters. But this time, the humans had positioned their fleet in a formation that the Azurian tacticians had initially criticized as recklessly exposed. Now June understood. The humans had baited a trap. Battle Group 7. Execute Attack Pattern Delta, came Admiral Juan's voice over the communication system. The Eternal Dawn was linked to the human command network to facilitate coordination. 7 human destroyers broke from their defensive positions and accelerated directly toward the largest voidborn vessel. The alien ship extended tendrils of dark energy, the same weapon that had disintegrated Azurian ships in previous battles. They're going to be destroyed, gasped June. But instead of firing their energy weapons, the human ships launched what appeared to be solid metal projectiles. The kinetic rounds slammed into the voidborn vessel at tremendous velocity, tearing through the dark hull in explosions of material that weren't absorbed like energy weapons. Physical ammunition, said June in wonder. So simple. Simple, but effective, replied Ta. The humans call those railguns, an ancient technology they perfected rather than abandoned. 3 voidborn ships converged on a lone human cruiser that had become separated from its battle group. The dark vessels surrounded it, extending their energy-draining fields that had consumed so many Azurian ships. Cruiser Defiant is surrounded, reported the Azurian communications officer. They're being drained. But instead of attempting to escape, the human vessel deliberately vented its reactor plasma in a controlled burst, creating a superheated cloud that disrupted the voidborn's energy field. Then it fired what the tactical display identified as fusion torpedoes into the momentary gap. The resulting explosion temporarily blinded the Eternal Dawn's sensors. When the display cleared, 2 voidborn ships were breaking apart, and the third was retreating. They used their own power system as a weapon, said June in disbelief. The radiation exposure alone would be fatal to us, finished Rai. But humans evolved under higher background radiation levels. Their cells have more effective repair mechanisms. The battle continued for hours. The voidborn, who had never encountered significant resistance before meeting the Azurians, seemed confused by the human tactics. Their strategy had always been to absorb energy attacks and drain power from enemy vessels. But the humans fought with physical munitions, unpredictable maneuvers, and a shocking willingness to endure conditions that would kill most spacefaring species. On the view screen, Jun watched as a human boarding party breached a mid-sized voidborn vessel. The Azurian tactical advisors had warned against this approach. Previous boarding attempts by Azurian forces had found the interior atmosphere of voidborn ships toxic and the internal gravity crushing. The boarding team reports success, announced the communications officer with undisguised amazement. They've reached the central chamber and are placing demolition charges. In an atmosphere that would dissolve our lungs, said Rai, shaking her head. And gravity that would crush our bodies, added June. The human team escaped the voidborn ship moments before it exploded from within, their small craft dodging debris as they returned to their carrier vessel. One of the shuttles was clearly damaged, venting atmosphere, yet continued its return journey. Their shuttle is compromised, reported the sensor officer. They should be dead. Switching to internal camera, said the communications officer. The image on the screen changed to show the interior of the damaged human shuttle. 3 soldiers were unconscious, but the others had sealed their combat suits and were administering emergency medical care. One soldier had a metal shard protruding from his shoulder, yet continued to pilot the vessel with his remaining functional arm. "How are they still functioning?" whispered Ree. "Redundant organs," replied Ta, who had been studying human physiology since their arrival. "And something they call adrenaline, a chemical their bodies produce in response to danger. It temporarily enhances their strength and suppresses pain." The tide of battle shifted decisively when the human flagship Dauntless executed a maneuver that Azurian physicists had calculated was theoretically impossible. The massive vessel cut its conventional engines, used maneuvering thrusters to change orientation while maintaining momentum, and then ignited its main drive to accelerate in a new direction without completing the turn. This allowed its main weapons to target the command vessel of the voidborn fleet, while presenting minimal surface area to enemy fire. "They're breaking the laws of combat," said June as the Dauntless unleashed its full arsenal against the voidborn command ship. For a moment, it seemed the shadow vessel would absorb the attack like all others. But the sustained barrage of kinetic rounds, followed by what humans called nuclear-tipped missiles, finally overwhelmed its defenses. The voidborn command ship shuddered, then began to break apart. What happened next shocked even the humans. The remaining voidborn vessels disengaged and retreated at maximum speed, abandoning their attack on the Luris system entirely. "They're running," said June in disbelief. "The voidborn are actually retreating." The bridge of the Eternal Dawn erupted in cheers. In all previous encounters, the voidborn had advanced relentlessly until every defender was eliminated. This was the first time they had withdrawn from a battlefield. Later, after the human and Azurian commanders had gathered for a debriefing on the Dauntless, Jun found himself standing next to Ambassador Tai as they watched human medical personnel treat their wounded. A human soldier was having a shattered bone in his leg realigned without anesthetic, gritting his teeth, but remaining conscious through a procedure that would have required complete sedation for an Azurian. "These humans," whispered Jun to Ambassador Tai. "They fight like they don't fear death." Tai watched as the injured soldier, his leg now encased in a medical brace, insisted on returning to duty despite the doctor's objections. "Perhaps," she replied thoughtfully. "When you evolve on a world that constantly tries to kill you, death becomes just another adversary to overcome." Admiral Huan approached them, his uniform bearing fresh scorch marks from a bridge fire during the battle. "Your tactics were unconventional," said Jun, struggling to find appropriate words for what he had witnessed. Huan smiled slightly. "We learned long ago that conventional tactics get soldiers killed. The voidborn expected us to fight like you, at a distance, with energy weapons. They weren't prepared for ships that ram them, for soldiers who board them, for weapons that can't be absorbed. You took terrible risks," said Ta. "Many of your people were injured." "But we held Luris," replied Huan simply. 12 billion lives were worth the risk." As Jun looked around the human medical bay, seeing wounded soldiers already planning for the next engagement, he realized humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, or even their physical resilience. It was their mindset, forged on a world that had taught them to view obstacles not as insurmountable barriers, but as challenges to overcome. For the first time since the voidborn appeared, Jun felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. The human cruiser Horizon drifted silently at the edge of the Nexus gate, its engines powered down to minimal levels to reduce its energy signature. Captain Sun stood on the bridge, her short black hair still damp from the rapid shower she'd taken after 36 hours on duty. Through the main viewport, the swirling blue-green anomaly that created the only stable passage between the Azurian home sectors and their outer colonies dominated the view. "Status report," Sun ordered, her voice steady despite the tension visible in her shoulders. Lieutenant Kang looked up from his tactical display. 6 voidborn vessels approaching from Vector 317. Estimated arrival time, 18 minutes. Captain Sun nodded. The Horizon asterisk had been positioned here as a tripwire to detect voidborn movements through the Nexus gate and report back. No one had expected her to actually engage an enemy fleet with just one medium cruiser and its complement of fighter craft. All hands to battle stations, she ordered. Power up main weapons systems, but keep them in standby mode. I want our energy signature as low as possible until the last moment. Captain, said Communications Officer Du hesitantly, Admiral Wan's orders were to observe and report, not to engage superior forces. Sun's lips thinned into a hard line. The Voidborn are targeting the refugee convoy from Luris. 8 million civilians in unpowered transport ships. If we withdraw, they die. No one on the bridge argued further. The crew of the Horizon asterisk had seen the aftermath of Voidborn attacks. Worlds stripped to barren rock. Entire populations vanished without trace. Fighter squadrons Alpha and Beta, prepare for launch. Sun ordered. Tactical, load kinetic penetrators in all forward tubes. Communications, prepare a message to Admiral Wan. We are engaging the enemy to protect civilian transports. Request immediate reinforcement. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person focused on their task. Many were veterans of Earth's regional conflicts before unification. Some had fought in the Mars Rebellion. All had volunteered for this mission, knowing the risks. Voidborn vessels changing course, reported Kang. They've detected us. They're moving to surround our position. Sun nodded. As expected, launch fighters. Full power to forward shields. The Horizon asterisk shuddered slightly as 24 fighter craft launched from its bays. The small, agile vessels spread out in a defensive screen before the cruiser. They're hailing us, said Du with surprise. The Voidborn are actually communicating. Put it through, ordered Sun. The main view screen flickered, then displayed a sight few beings had ever witnessed, a Voidborn in its true form. The creature appeared semi-transparent, with multiple limbs that seemed to shift and change position as they watched. Its face, if it could be called that, was a smooth surface with 3 glowing points arranged in a triangle. Human vessel, came a voice that seemed to bypass the ship's speakers and resonate directly in their minds. Your position is untenable. You face 6 warships with 1 damaged cruiser. Surrender, and your Earth will be granted protection under our domain. Sun stepped forward, her expression unchanged. The creature had spoken in perfect Earth standard, clearly having analyzed human communications. Record my response and broadcast on all frequencies, she instructed Du, then faced the screen directly. This is Captain Sun of the Earth Defense Force Cruiser Horizon asterisk. We are aware of your numerical advantage. We are aware of your tactical position. We choose to stand our ground. She paused, then added, Earth doesn't need protection. We've survived worse than you. The bridge fell silent. The Voidborn commander remained motionless for several seconds, the glowing points on its face pulsing slightly faster. Explain, it finally demanded. Sun raised an eyebrow. You've studied our communications, but not our history. Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages, megavolcanoes, meteor impacts, plagues, and our own foolishness. We learned to thrive in environments from Arctic ice to burning deserts. Your ships may outnumber mine, but every human on board this vessel comes from a lineage of survivors stretching back millions of years. The Voidborn commander remained silent, as if processing this information. Your species is young, it finally stated. Barely 10,000 years of civilization. How can you claim such confidence? Youth has its advantages, replied Sun. We haven't forgotten how to fight with our bare hands when technology fails. Now, I suggest you withdraw from this position. The civilian transports under our protection will not be harmed. You have no leverage for such demands, the Voidborn responded, but something had changed in its tone. The certainty was gone, replaced by something approaching curiosity. I have the leverage of uncertainty, said Sun. You've consumed 14 worlds without resistance. You've never faced humans before. You don't know what we're capable of. Are you willing to risk your fleet to find out? The communication ended abruptly. The view screen returned to showing the Nexus gate and the approaching voidborn vessels. They're continuing their approach, reported Kang. But they've slowed and spread out their formation. Sun nodded. They're being cautious now. Good. That buys us time. She turned to her executive officer. Commander Han, I need options. Han had been quietly working at a secondary tactical station. The Nexus gate creates gravitational distortions we might be able to use to our advantage. If we position ourselves here, he indicated a point on the display, and detonate our reserve torpedoes at these coordinates, we could create a cascading reaction in the gate's energy field. That would destabilize the entire gate, said Sun, studying the calculations. How long? Temporary disruption only. Maybe 3 hours before it stabilizes again. Sun considered this. 3 hours might be enough time for Admiral Wan to bring reinforcements, if he received their message and responded immediately. Prepare the torpedoes, she ordered, and put me through to the refugee convoy. The face of an Azurian captain appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in distress. Captain Sun, the voidborn vessels will intercept us before we can reach the gate. Change of plans, Captain Puyo, said Sun. Take your convoy to these coordinates instead. She transmitted the data. The *Horizon* will engage the voidborn and buy you time. The Azurian's silver skin paled further. That is suicide, Captain. Sun smiled slightly. Not necessarily. Just get your people to safety. As the refugee ships changed course, moving away from the direct path to the Nexus gate, the Horizon* powered up its main engines and moved directly toward the approaching voidborn fleet. They're accelerating to intercept, reported Kang. All 6 vessels on an attack vector. Deploy countermeasures, ordered Sun. Launch torpedoes on calculated trajectories. The Horizon* fired a spread of specialized warheads, not at the voidborn ships, but into seemingly empty space around the Nexus gate. The weapons detonated in a precise pattern, creating ripples in the gate's energy field that began to interfere with each other. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The stable blue-green swirl of the gate began to fluctuate wildly, sending out pulses of gravimetric distortion that buffeted all nearby vessels. Direct hit on the Lid voidborn ship, called Kang as one of the Horizon's fighter squadrons, executed a daring attack run. Their drive system is destabilizing. The damaged voidborn vessel began to emit pulses of dark energy that interfered with its companion systems. The precise formation of the alien fleet began to break down as they dealt with both the Horizon's attacks and the increasingly unstable gate. We've got them confused, said Han with grim satisfaction. They expected us to run, not to attack. The voidborn commander is hailing us again, reported Du. Ignore it, said Sun. Keep broadcasting our distress signal to Admiral Wan. For 2 hours, the Horizon executed a complex dance around the edges of the destabilized Nexus gate, using the gravitational anomalies to multiply the effectiveness of its limited weapons. The human fighters darted between the much larger voidborn vessels, exploiting weaknesses and forcing the aliens to divide their attention. The cruiser took hits, serious ones. 2 decks were exposed to vacuum. The port engine was operating at 40% capacity, and the medical bay was filled with injured crew members. But Captain Sun had positioned her ship precisely where the voidborn couldn't bring their full firepower to bear without risking the gate's complete collapse. Hull breach on Deck 5, reported the damage control officer. Emergency force fields holding at 60%. Sun wiped blood from a cut on her forehead as she studied the tactical display. Reroute power from the secondary systems to maintain those fields. Captain, called Du suddenly, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching. Large vessels. The bridge crew held their breath. If these were more voidborn ships, the Horizon would not survive the next engagement. Identification confirmed, said Du, relief flooding her voice. It's Admiral Wan's fleet. 3 battleships, 12 destroyers, and support vessels. A ragged cheer went up from the exhausted bridge crew. Sun allowed herself a small smile before issuing new orders. All fighters returned to base. Damage control teams to priority stations. Communications, inform Admiral Wan of our status and the condition of the Nexus gate. 3 hours after Captain Sun had declared her intention to stand against overwhelming odds, the first human battleship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. The massive vessel, bristling with weapons, was soon joined by its sister ships. The voidborn fleet, already disorganized by the Horizon's unexpected resistance and the gate's instability, faced a new and far more powerful human force. Without attempting further communication, the 6 alien vessels broke formation completely and accelerated away from the Nexus gate at maximum speed. As the last voidborn ship disappeared from sensors, Admiral Wan's voice came through the Horizon's communication system. Captain Sun, your ship is a mess, and you disobeyed a direct order. There was a pause. Well done. Sun sank into her command chair, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion of the past hours. Thank you, Admiral. We aim to please. As medical teams treated the wounded and repair crews worked to stabilize the damaged cruiser, Sun reflected on the battle. For the first time, the Voidborn had retreated not just from a lost engagement, but from the possibility of one. They had faced uncertainty, and they had chosen caution over confrontation. The tide of the war was turning. The violet skies of Azuria Prime darkened as night fell over the capital city. Lights came on across the sprawling metropolis, illuminating structures that curved and flowed in ways unfamiliar to human architecture. The battle had ended 3 days ago. The massive Voidborn armada that had threatened to consume the Azurian homeworld lay in ruins, scattered across the system in fragments of dark material that continued to puzzle scientists of both species. On the highest observation deck of the central spire, Admiral Wan stood alone, watching the distant pinpoints of light that represented his fleet in high orbit. Some ships showed damage patterns, sections that remained dark where lights should shine. Many would require extensive repairs before they could return to Earth. Some never would. The door to the observation deck slid open with a soft hiss. Wan didn't turn, but he recognized the light footsteps of Ambassador Tai as she crossed the polished floor to join him. The final casualty reports have been compiled, she said quietly, her silver skin reflecting the city lights below. 2,814 humans gave their lives to save our world. Wan nodded solemnly. Each name will be honored in Earth's Memorial Hall. They stood in silence for several minutes, watching as a formation of human shuttles descended through the atmosphere, bringing medical supplies and engineering teams to assist with rebuilding efforts. Our people are curious, Ta finally said. They ask why you fight so hard for worlds not your own. Many expected that once the Voidborn were defeated, you would claim our systems as payment for your aid. Is that what you expected? Asked Wan, turning to look at her directly. Ta hesitated, her 4 eyes blinking in the diagonal pattern that humans had learned indicated thoughtful consideration. We expected you to claim our worlds, she admitted. It would be your right by most conquest standards. You possessed the military might. We could not stop you. Wan turned back to the viewport, his expression thoughtful. Early in our history, humans were much as you feared. We conquered. We took. We believed strength gave us the right to rule. He paused. We nearly destroyed ourselves with that thinking. Below them, an Azurian emergency vessel passed, its lights flashing as it carried wounded to a nearby medical center where human doctors worked alongside Azurian healers, sharing techniques and technologies. The universe is too hostile for anyone to stand alone, Ambassador, Wan continued. We learned that on Earth long ago. Our nations fought each other until we realized the greater threats came from beyond. Climate change, resource depletion, asteroid impacts. Only by uniting did we survive. And now you extend that philosophy to other species, said Ta. Self-interest, if nothing else, replied Juan with a slight smile. Earth still lies in the path the voidborn would have taken. Had we not helped you, we would have faced them alone later. The door opened again, admitting Science Director Hyun, who approached with the measured pace of one bearing significant news. Admiral, Ambassador, he greeted them. The analysis of the captured voidborn ship is complete. We've confirmed our theory. They were feeding, guessed Juan. Hyun nodded. The voidborn do not consume resources in the conventional sense. They absorb energy patterns, particularly those generated by sentient life forms. An entire planetary population represents an enormous feast for them. That explains why they targeted populated worlds first, said Ta, and why they seemed particularly interested in our temple worlds, where billions gather to link minds in communion. Complex energy patterns, agreed Hyun. The more advanced the civilization, the more appealing the target. Have you determined their origin? Asked Juan. We believe they come from the space between galaxies, replied Hyun, a region with energy states fundamentally different from our own. They were drawn to our galaxy by the increasing technological outputs of our civilizations. And they will return, said Ta, her voice heavy with certainty. Yes, agreed Hyun, but not soon. Their fleet retreated beyond our galaxy's edge. Our estimates suggest it will take them centuries to rebuild their numbers. Centuries during which we can prepare, said Juan. Together. 6 months passed. The scars of war remained visible across Azurian space, but rebuilding proceeded at a remarkable pace. Human engineering techniques, developed to withstand the harsh conditions of Earth and its colonies, proved invaluable in creating more resilient Azurian structures. In return, Azurian scientists shared their knowledge of energy manipulation and faster-than-light travel, allowing human ships to become more efficient and responsive. The exchange benefited both species in ways neither had anticipated. On the central plaza of Azuria Prime, thousands gathered for the unveiling of a monument commissioned by the Confederacy Council. Ambassador Ta stood on the speaker's platform, flanked by Admiral Juan and other officials from both species. Today, we commemorate not just a victory, but a beginning, Ta addressed the crowd. For too long, the galaxy has been divided between those evolved in harsh conditions and those from gentler worlds. We viewed each other with suspicion and fear. She gestured to the veiled monument behind her. The Voidborn taught us that such divisions make us vulnerable. Only by combining the resilience of Earth with the technological advancement of Azuria could we stand against them. And so shall we stand against whatever threats may come in the future. At her signal, the veil dropped, revealing the sculpture 10 meters tall. It showed a human hand and an Azurian hand clasped together, rising from a base inscribed with words in both languages. From the forge of adversity comes the strongest alliances. The crowd erupted in cheers. Among them stood Captain Sun of the Horizon Asterisk, now promoted to Commodore. Beside her was Captain Pio, whose refugee convoy she had saved at the Nexus gate. It's rather sentimental, observed Sun with a slight smile. Perhaps, agreed Pio. But sentiment has its place, even in war, or especially after war. They watched as a group of children, both human and Azurian, were brought forward to place commemorative flowers at the base of the monument. The human children moved with the natural confidence of those accustomed to higher gravity, while the Azurian children drifted with the graceful motions of their species. Yet they worked together, helping each other reach the proper places for their offerings. The next generation, said Sun, they won't remember a time before our species knew each other. Later that evening, Admiral Juan met with the Galactic Council, representatives from the dozen major spacefaring civilizations that had observed the Voidborn conflict but offered no assistance. Many had believed the Azurians already lost, and Earth too primitive to make a difference. We propose a mutual defense initiative, Juan stated to the assembled delegates. A sharing of technology, resources, and, when necessary, military assets. Why should we trust humans in our territories? Asked the Myth-Airy representative, his crystalline form glittering under the chamber lights. Your species evolved as predators. Your history is filled with conquest. And yet, when we had the power to claim Azurian worlds, we did not, countered Juan. Judge us by our actions, not our origins. Ambassador Ta rose to stand beside him. The voidborn will return, stronger and more numerous. They now know our weaknesses and our strengths. Next time, they will not underestimate humans or any other species. We must not underestimate each other. The debate continued for hours, but as night fell on the Azurian capital, the first steps toward a galactic alliance were taken. Provisional agreements were signed, exchange programs were established. Ships from a dozen worlds began joint exercises under combined command. In the shadow of the monument, Azurian children played a game they had learned from human children, a modified version of tag that accounted for their different physical capabilities. Nearby, the children of human diplomats were being taught an Azurian melody that used tones humans could barely perceive. General Min, watching from a distance, shook his head in wonder. 6 months ago, we feared extinction. Now we stand at the beginning of a new era. Science Director Hyun joined him. The humans have a saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. Perhaps crisis is the mother of cooperation. They have many sayings, noted Min, most involving conflict or survival. Products of their world, replied Hyun. A planet that forged them through adversity, just as the Voidborn forged our alliance through threat. As darkness fell completely, the monument was illuminated from below, casting the joined hands in brilliant light that reached toward the stars. Somewhere in the distant void between galaxies, the Voidborn retreated and regrouped. But they would return to find not divided civilizations easy to consume one by one, but a united galaxy prepared to stand together. In the highest room of the central spire, Admiral Juan and Ambassador Ta signed the final document establishing the Galactic Defense Accord. To unlikely friendships, said Juan, raising a glass in the human tradition of a toast. Ta mirrored the gesture with her own glass, and to the understanding that our differences are not weaknesses, but strengths when combined. Outside the window, the first joint fleet of human and Azurian vessels moved into formation, preparing for a mission to establish early warning systems at the galaxy's edge. Their lights formed a new constellation against the darkness, a constellation that would grow to include ships from every world willing to stand together against the void.